Stop your stuttering by unlocking those frames, baby. The path to a smooth experience all starts with your video settings. So I'm going to take you through the best in-game settings for FPS, as well as have a quick look at the settings used by the best professional players at the moment. Now, to get to your video settings from the main menu, you want to go up here to the cog. Of course, that'll take you across to all these options. You'll go to the video tab, and then these two are the ones you want to look at, video and advanced video. Brightness is user's preference. Choose a brightness that works with your monitor and isn't too dark or too bright. Of course, aspect ratio and resolution are all personal preference. I use 16:9 at native, which is also known as 1920x1080. But if you really want to squeeze some extra frames out, you can go to 4:3. You can play on stretch, you can play on black bars, and then you can drop this down to, look, some pros are still playing on 1024x768. So you can try it out as well. And if you're playing on a laptop, just disable the laptop power saving settings. I would recommend, if you want to play competitively, not to use a laptop, but these settings will still work for your lappy anyway. Now onto the advanced video settings. All right, let's go through these and I'll show you what you want for the best possible FPS and lowest input latency in Counter-Strike 2. Boost player contrast. This is down to personal preference, as it doesn't feel like it does much right now. This setting was much more useful in CSGO, but it's not the same in CS2. I personally have it enabled, but you can happily disable it if you want to try to squeeze a few more frames. Wait for vertical sync, also known as Vsync, off. No questions on this one, it makes your game feel horrible. Multi-sampling anti-aliasing mode. For the best FPS, you want this off. If you need this because you hate seeing the jagged lines, then use CMAA2 on 1080p+. And for any 4x3 gremlins, you want this at a minimum CMAA2, if not on 4x MSAA for a smoother look. Global shadow quality. For the best FPS, you want this on low. For competition, you want this on at least high. It's a small FPS hit for how many advantages you gain in-game from this setting. Model and texture detail. Low for best FPS. Some players prefer to have this on medium, which gets rid of some weird visuals in CS2 at the moment. Texture filtering mode. Bilinear for the best FPS. Most players will use at least Anistropic 4x, which doesn't provide many big advantages, but you do lose a small amount of FPS for slightly sharper visuals. Shader detail. Low is the go for FPS. Turning this up makes the game slightly smoother for things like shadows. My opinion is you're here to shoot people and this doesn't help you do that, so keep it on low. Particle detail. Low for the best FPS. This old mate here just wants to steal your hard-earned frames. Don't let him do it. Ambient occlusion. This one's a tricky one in the community, but in terms of getting the most FPS possible, you want to disable it. If you are super competitive or playing competitively at all, this can help you spot enemies against surfaces before they peek out, so it is a positive for gaining info at a cost of a decent amount of frames. If you have a high-end PC, it's worth having on, but for the sake of the frames, turn it off. High dynamic range. Performance for frames. I would personally have it on quality, as would a lot of pros out there. Visually, it helps you a lot when spotting enemies in dark areas or when running between light and dark areas. If you need frames desperately, turn this to performance, as it is a very small impact on your frames. Fidelity FX Super Resolution. Unless you own a budget PC or a really old PC, you'll want this one disabled. For the best frames, you can turn this on performance, but you'll more than likely regret that decision once you start playing matchmaking of any sort. And try it out, you'll see what I mean. And of course, for all the NVIDIA users out there, NVIDIA REFLEX low latency. The NVIDIA recommended optimal settings for this are listed on the screen. For the most part, they recommend enabled without boost. If you want those extra 10 or so frames, you can turn this to disabled. Ultimately, if you're pumping more frames than your refresh rate on your monitor, you'll have a lower input lag than if you have less frames overall. If you already have some frames to spare at this point, it's worth having this enabled to save yourself some input. If you have AMD, sorry, you came to the wrong place and I don't know how to help you. Now that that's out of the way, I'll show you the settings of the highest rated players on HLTV in both 4x3 stretched and 16:9 resolutions. Now, before we take a peek into the paddock of these two goats over here, make sure you hit that sub button or the goats might come after you, alright? Be careful. Donk is currently the highest rated player in the last month since CS2's full release, and these are the settings that he plays on. Alright, first things first, normal, 4x3 aspect ratio, 1280x960 stretched, and whatever his monitor settings are, always use the highest refresh rate. And now for the juicy stuff. Advanced video, let's just blast through this one, huh? Boost player contrast, enabled. Vsync, disabled. MSAA on 8 times. Shadows, high. Models, low. filtering trilinear, shaders low, particles low, ambient occlusion disabled, HDR on quality, Fidelity FX disabled, of course, and reflex disabled for the top of the HLTV individual stats right now. Since CS2's release, Ropz is currently the third highest rated player on HLTV and the highest rated player using native res. Let's have a look at what he uses. Now, of course, for Ropz, the IEM Sydney MVP of the tournament, and of course from FaZe, taking the first IEM of CS2. A big congrats to him again, but here's his settings, no more wasting time. Widescreen 16:9, native 1920x1080, and full screen with whatever the highest resolution. He's probably playing 360Hz. And of course, 80% brightness for him there as well. Now, no more time wasting. Here's what you're here for. Advanced video time, boost player contrast, enabled. Vsync disabled, of course. CMAA2 for the anti-aliasing. Shadows very high for Ropz. Medium on models and texture. Filtering mode, we actually have Anistropic 16 times. He loves it sharp as hell. Shader detail low, particle detail low, occlusion on high. He loves to see those extra little shadows. HDR on quality. Disabled for Fidelity FX. And his NVIDIA Reflex low latency is enabled plus boost. Now, before we move on, remember these GOATs are at the top of their game, but also would have very high-end computers to play on at home. So remember to take that into account before fully copying Ropz or Donk settings here. Hopefully you learn a thing or two during this video and have managed to squeeze a few more frames out of your game with these video settings. Remember to stay hydrated and have a wonderful day.